Awesome. Welcome to another episode of Fight the Burnout. Today we have a very special guest. We had her boyfriend on already, Chris, the ex-cop of 20 years. So if you didn't get that episode, make sure you go listen to it. But today we have Natalie, and she is the founder of the movement Nothing But Love Notes. And I read when Chris sent me through some stuff about Natalie. I was like, oh my God, she's got to be on here because her backstory is incredible. She took starting to burn out and turned it into a movement, which is amazing. But as usual, Natalie, I'm going to let you tell us about it because I know I'll end up screwing it up as things happen. So why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, who you are, and just tell us about the movement.
Okay. So again, my name is Natalie, and back in the fall of 2015, that's where it all started. Kind of at the darkest time of my life, my mother had been just diagnosed with multiple myeloma, which is terminal cancer. We were told that she could live, up to 10 years with treatment. And it was devastating because she was my very best friend. I mean, she was my confidant, and she was the voice, at the end of the day when having a rough day. So it was really tough going from her daughter to her caregiver. It was a 2-year battle. After a few months of the treatment, she just decided she just couldn't do it anymore. And her doctor said, it was the lightest dose of chemo. She wasn't losing her hair. She lost a lot of weight, but I think it had more to do with psychosomatic symptoms. She went into this depression. It was hard because she was the strongest woman that I knew. She was she was 5 foot nothing, but she was tough, and she raised me to be just like her. So after a few months, getting her to her doctor's appointments and treatment, and she's like, I don't know if I can do this. And literally, she wasn't coming out of her bedroom. She wasn't eating. And it was Valentine's Day 2016, and I'm sitting on the couch feeling sorry for myself because I was just a recent empty nester. My kids had just gone out into the world and were doing great. And I just wasn't where I thought I would be at that time in my life. On top of which I was just burnt out. I was tired. I just couldn't even imagine where this was going, especially just the thought of losing her. I didn't know what was going to happen after that. So I'm sitting on the couch Valentine's Day, and I'm like, I'm not acting like the woman that she raised me to be. And I know that if our roles were reversed, there's no way she would have let me sit in there in a depression. She would have found some way to motivate me to get me up and out of bed. I know that. I just do that. She did that my whole life. Anytime I would start sulking or whatever, she, lit a fire up underneath me. So I went into her room and I'm like, get up, meet me at the kitchen table. I just had this thought, I had a junk drawer full of blank thank you notes. And I thought, it's Valentine's Day. Maybe we can sit down, write some notes, and go out and hand them out just randomly, do something. So I was surprised. She kind of looked at me, rolled her eyes, but she got out of bed. I think she was just waiting for me to push her, So she came to the table. I told her what we were going to do. And she says, let's write them for veterans and first responders, people who are out serving our community. She had an affinity for vets. Her uncles were veterans, and they were killed in the Baton Death March. And her first grandson is a veteran and a police officer. So we wrote 50. Most of them were for veterans and first responders. We did write a couple that were just random to anybody. Yeah. Thank yous, and I hope you're having a great day kind of a thing. Got her in the car, drove her around for 3 hours, literally just going through parking lots, and we'd see veteran license plates, and we would tuck the notes up underneath the windshield wiper. We saw a police officer. He was fueling up his vehicle, so we stopped and gave him one. And all of a sudden, you see this officer who's kind of just going about his business, and you give him a note, and cops are a little bit standoffish. They're a little bit on guard. At first he's like, wait, what are you doing? What are you doing? But then he got this big grin and he's like, wow, thanks, and we talked to a couple veterans in the grocery store. We had one Korean war veteran. He must have been 90, just broke down in tears. And he says, I never talk about my service. And then 30 minutes later, we knew his whole story. So it just created this humongous conversation. And by the time we got back, after we gave out almost all 50, my mother was smiling and laughing, and she says, I don't even remember what I was so worried about. And so we started doing it every day. We'd go to Starbucks, we'd start off there, we'd write notes, have coffee, talk, and we started having a dialogue, her and I, which we weren't having because she was in her room before. And I would have missed those last 2 years, just talking with her, laughing. We'd see police officers walk into Starbucks, and we'd call them over and we'd give them a note, or our firefighters. We had one fire station come in and there was like 5 or 6 firefighters. They came over and talked to us, and it was just incredible. And so, fast forward down the road, my son's like, you need to have a hashtag. I had no idea what a hashtag was. I mean, I'd seen people posting it, but I thought it was just like a trendy kind of, oh, cool, hashtag this. Yeah. But we created a hashtag. That's where I came up with Nothing But Love Notes, and a Facebook page and Instagram. And suddenly people started following, and they're like wanting to get involved. And so people now literally are doing it across the country. And I personally have probably written at least 15,000. I mean, literally, I just love it. My mother, she passed away October of 2017. But she made me promise that I would continue. And it's funny because I wouldn't be here. I wouldn't have moved to California. I wouldn't be with Chris if it wasn't for this love note. It changed my life in such an incredible way. And I think it's because when you are at your darkest point and you just don't have a clue what you're going to do, I think the best thing that you can do for yourself is, first of all, just hold fast to what you are grateful for. Yeah. And for me, I was the people around me. And the more love I showed, the more I got back. And so suddenly I had this network of people that I didn't have before. And my mom always said, when God takes something from you, he gives you something greater in return. And I lost her in October 2017, but I have so much that I would never have had if I hadn't gotten off the couch and handed out a love note. My mom on her deathbed, I've been single since the year 2000, divorced. And I didn't really date a lot because I was raising 2 boys, and I just kind of kept my eyes on the road and was trying to get my writing career up off the ground and trying to get them up and healthy and out of the house. And so I didn't really date a lot. So on her deathbed, I remember we're sitting in the hospital and she says, and she was never wrong. Like, she was always right, especially when it came to me. But she said, I'm really sorry, honey, but I really think that you're going to be single for a very long time. And I'm like, what? I mean, this is what you're going to give me on your deathbed? I mean, something more. Yeah. And she's like, well, no man is going to ever understand the work you do. Nobody's going to understand you writing love notes for firefighters and police officers and strong military guys. They're just not going to get that. And so I kind of walked away from that conversation a little bummed, but I've always been kind of a hopeful romantic and hopeless romantic. So I just kept doing what I was doing. And it just so happened that Chris he showed up, a mutual friend brought him to one of my events, and the rest is history. Like, I found love on so many levels, just from trying to find a little, peace and happiness in a really dark time. So
that's amazing. I can't actually describe how many times I got goosebumps while you're saying all that. One, sorry to hear that your mom passed away, but also what a crazy and incredible, gift that she gave you to do that. Because, I can say it hand on heart. When I was in my darkest days, when I was in the police, a lot of it was because I felt like nobody was actually grateful for what I did. And some of it was in my head, but also, I remember going on a ride along when I was in one of my deepest, darkest times. and having people walk up to us, like me, I was with the cops and we were literally eating lunch, and they're like, they wanted, first off, they wanted to buy us lunch. Some other people. I was like, well, this is weird. And then people actually saying thank you. And I was like, wow, this is actually incredible that, you just watching the cop's face over there. And so, thanks for carrying on with what you're doing. And, as you said, it creates so much.
Yeah, those 2 words saved my life. And I would, I didn't start this with this idea that it was going to grow. I had no idea that there were people hurting, that to the point where, like, I was standing in line at Starbucks, and the guy behind me, I overheard him talking. He was a Marine from Vietnam. I turned around. I keep them in my purse to this day. Wherever I am, I have notes in my purse for if it's a Marine, a veteran, or whatever. Pulled a note out and gave it to him, and he just started weeping. And he told me, he was in Vietnam and nobody's ever thanked him. And I didn't know what I was walking into. I just was trying to find a way to get my mom out of the bedroom, out of the house and out of her own head. And it turned into this really a gift for people that I've never met. And I think it's just been wonderful and beautiful. And some of them have become friends and they stay in touch. But I have had more grown men cry on my shoulder, like from even police officers. And you guys, come off so tough. They're kind of the scariest to approach, because they've got the gear and the look, and they're just like,
Yep.
But you just get to know them in just a handful of words with the note, and it just crazy. It's just crazy.
Yeah, I'm kind of speechless, to be perfectly honest. And normally I'm pretty good at talking in that on these. So Natalie, I just want to, just for people out there, you said some really key things, during that was, just having something to focus on, something positive, something grateful, focusing on that grateful side of things. How did you, during that, I know, you got your mom out of bed and you saw the happiness in her and that, how'd you make sure that, I know when you're in that dark stage, because I've been there, when you're in that dark stage, it can be quite hard to actually focus on that happiness and that. How did you find to be able to actually do that?
Well, it kind of, like I said, it happened pretty quickly, like just getting her out of her room and the act of sitting down and writing notes. It kind of took us away from where we were. We're sitting down, I put on some good music, I made a couple of Reuben sandwiches, and we're sitting there at the table and just talking, and it took us away, just writing thank you over and over and again. And it just took us out of that state, that dark state. But it was in the interactions we were having with people. And it was hard not to be grateful, because like I said, we could be sitting at Starbucks and a cop would walk in and we'd call him over and we'd have shared smiles, and he would say, I just had this really rough call, this really means a lot. So you start to see that you're not alone. You're not, you tend to think that you're the only one in this bad headspace. You think that nobody else understands where you're at. And then you start talking to people and you realize that we're all going through something at any given time, and so to just be able to, I've been doing this it's going to be 6 years coming up in next Valentine's Day. Wow. And it's I can't even tell you, it just doesn't get old, and it just keeps me motivated. It's just like feeding the soul. Like I said, I just was doing this just to get her out of bed, but it just feeds me so much that I just can't stop. And like meeting Chris, my mom said that I would never find a man who understands what I do. This guy, not only does he understand what I do, but he like pushes me to be better at it. There's days where, I'll see a cop and I'm like, he's like, let's stop, let's go give him a note. And I'll be like, no, he's kind of parked funny. And I just get nervous, and he's like, nope, we're doing it. And then I'm so glad. It's just finding, and it's not always easy, because, you have peaks and valleys of feeling burnt out and tired. And then one day you wake up, you're just motivated. You want to get everything done in sight. But I think it's just taking that one step and saying, no, I'm just going to do this one little thing. I'm going to go give this guy a note. And then it just like, it's like a booster shot of just, I just can't explain it. And I really want people to know more than anything is that it's so easy. I mean, all it takes is sitting down, writing a note that takes less time than it does to order a cup of coffee these days, and to go up to somebody, a complete stranger, and just say thank you. That is the motivation in itself. It's just
I think
crazy.
it's so important. It's awesome to see. And, I actually kind of wish maybe it's something that we could do together, but I wish that they did it here more. And that was, for me, being a cop here in New Zealand, the US has always been, I feel like it's always been better on that side of thanking, just the general public likes to thank, veterans, and, depending on which state you're in, there's even more of it. You go to Hawaii and everybody is, pro, let's say thank you to everybody because there's so many vets. But over here, it's not so much.
Yeah.
And so it is. But when you do get that thank you, not even just as a officer or first responder or a vet, but even just as a person, when somebody holds a door open saying thank you, it brings that just that happiness out, doesn't it?
People in the eye, people don't do that anymore. Everybody's on their phone or their device, and it doesn't have to be cops and veterans. It can just be somebody who helps you in this, even the slightest way, a teacher or a coach or your neighbor, just anybody. And it just, I want people to know, especially right now, the world is like, last year was rough in so many different ways. We've distanced ourselves because it's supposed to be safer for us, and now people are, I think, struggling to let themselves come back into their circles, but it's just I want people to know that, you don't have to cure cancer or solve world peace or world hunger to make a difference. You can just acknowledge somebody where they're at, whether it's, just hold the door open for them and say hello, look them in the eye and say hello. You don't know if anybody, could be somebody that has not had anybody say anything to them in months, or even, say thank you ever. So it's just something so simple. I try to go back. I'm writing a book now on these past 5.5 years, and it all just comes down just to being aware of others, of people, and just saying thank you. That's all it is, and people, I've been on the Kelly Clarkson show and Good Morning America and all these great, opportunities to go on to talk about this, and people treat me like I've invented electricity, but the truth is, all I've done is just say thank you to another human being. And it's just been, I was sitting in I'm going to share this story. I was sitting in a Starbucks writing notes, and this is after my mom passed away, and just stocking up. So I had some in my purse, and this young veteran walked in, and he, I don't know, maybe 33 or something like that. And he had a veteran cap. So I knew, he was in the Army. So I quickly wrote a note for him, and I got up and I walked over to his table, and he was studying. So I didn't want to interrupt him, but I slid it across the table, and I just said, I just wanted to stop you and say thank you. And he's like, oh, thanks. I went back to my table and I was writing notes. Went back to writing notes. And about an hour later, he gets up and he leaves. And 10 minutes later, he comes back in, and it was crowded. It was just slammed that day. It was a Saturday morning. So he walks through the crowd and he gets to me, and I look up, and his face is beet red. He's got tears coming down his cheeks. And he's like, I didn't think of it much when you gave it to me, but I went and I sat in my car and I read it. He says, and he's literally choked up, and he's having a tough time saying the words. He says, I just had to come tell you my story. He says, my name is Joe. I served in the U.S. Army for 12 years. I did 2 tours to Afghanistan, and I lost my best friend in the second tour. I literally watched him burn alive in front of me. And he said, so this note means so much to me. And it was in that moment, I'm like, ooh, maybe I shouldn't be stirring these emotions. Maybe it's not a good thing.
Yeah.
And I said as much, because he's crying and I'm crying now, and we're in the middle of Starbucks hugging, and the whole world's going on around us, but we're in this little bubble. And he's like, no, he says, if you hadn't, it was stuck right here. Those feelings get stuck right here. And I was able to release them. So there have been times when I've wondered if this is actually a good thing, and I'm not just being selfish because it feels so good for me. But
I think you touched on some really important things there. And I think, for those listening, it's real important, attaching something that's positive to a negative thing and having some sort of big impact of positivity. That negativity you end up, or that trauma that you had ends up being, actually, there are people that care about me, and that actually, want me to keep moving and work through that. And so, like you said, you have those moments where you're like, oh, do I bring that back up? But it's one thing that I say all the time: tell people how you're feeling. Be brutally fucking honest. Because for me, I say that because that's what I did. And, in a way, I guess, I came back to the States. I don't know if you heard, like, when, Chris and I were talking, I went back to the States and I did a 2.5-month motorcycle trip around the US. And I literally told people why I was there. I was burned out, PTSD, had trauma from being a cop for 7 years. And they're all, the amount of times that they'd say, oh, first off, thanks for your service. And I'm like, it feels like something new for me. I'm like, I don't need a thank you for it. But at the same time, it's like, hey, wait a second. All that stuff that I've gone through right now, somebody's grateful that I've gone through it. So you start to shift that into gratefulism. And so it ends up becoming, all that stuff was for a reason, because you can get lost in it, especially in those traumatic roles that, military, police, fire, all of us, play in. So yeah, no, I love what you're doing.
I feel like we can't get caught up in our own head. We're all going through stuff. We all get caught up in our own stuff. And the best thing we can do is turn around and turn that on someone else. Say something nice, just turn it into something great, grateful. My mother, speaking of brutally honest, she was the one, like I said, she was the voice. And she still is in my head. I still can hear her if I'm, wearing my hair wrong or wearing the wrong shoes. She was brutally honest. She would say, nope, don't wear those shoes. Or, she would just tell me like it is. And as her only daughter, it was so annoying, but she was usually right, and I miss that more than anything, is that voice, somebody that would care enough to tell you, to say something, whether it's nice or whatever. Today I was having I had a task that I needed to do today. Chris's his book, we're doing a second edition. So I spent literally all day working on something that should have taken 10 minutes. It was just the formatting. It was a nightmare.
Yeah.
On top of which, we're combining all our stuff because I moved in with him. So I was going through boxes and I have stuff all over. And I found this letter in the middle of all my angst and frustration over this stupid the littlest formatting thing that should take, like I said, 10 minutes. Ready to cry, pull my hair out. And I find this note she wrote to me, and it literally turned me around. It was like something she wrote probably, I don't know, 6-7 years ago. Just saying, I believe in you. You're going to, you got big things ahead of you. This is, you're going to be all right. And I was like, wow, she wrote that years ago. And it just turned me around. I was able to calm myself down and get into a place where I could do what I needed to do. So I know that if we would just look out for each other more, and it doesn't take much, it just doesn't.
No, it doesn't. So, Natalie, for yourself, what do you do now to prevent yourself from getting into any kind of that darkness of burnout and that?
Now that, I followed Chris out to California, and now we're like a 9-minute walk from the beach, and he's very intuitive, like with me. Like if he sees that I'm getting overwhelmed and whatever, we'll go out for a walk. We'll just take a walk on the beach and literally just get your head into some, salty sea air, and just talk. And So that's usually what I do is we just go out for a long walk, or I will pick up a pen and I write every day. I try to write notes every day. And again, I'm, working on my book. So that always helps. I think that writing is a very cathartic act. And if you're going through anything, it's always kind of helpful to write things down. I think it helps get it outside of here and puts it onto something that you could, if you want to tear it up and throw it away or burn it or whatever. But writing is very cathartic. I think it's what saved Chris after his 20 plus year career as a police officer. Writing that book, I think that's probably the greatest thing that helped him through it.
Yeah, he said that when we talked, and I totally agree. I tell clients, and even myself, I've had my mom tell me like I've been like furious about something. I'm like, oh, I'm just gonna do this, and she's like, Chris, just write it down. And she used to say this when I was a kid. Even she's like, Chris, if you're pissed off with somebody, write them an email. Don't send it, but write an email. Sit on it for a day, reread it, and if you still feel all those same exact feelings, then you can send it. But otherwise, just write it down, get it out of your head. And I say to people all the time, it's because those thoughts end up like a ping pong ball in your head and they just bounce around and they just never go away. They just keep bouncing around and getting bigger and bigger. It's like, write it down. And if you want to burn it, then burn it. My uncle, who's an actor in the States, in the US, he said the same exact thing. He'll write in a journal and he'll have his fireplace going. He'll write in the journal and that. And then what he does is he rips them up and he burns them. Because he's like, one, I don't want people to find it because of the career that he's in. He's like, oh, it could be used against me in that. But he's like, I know I need to get it out of my head. And so I think that you've hit something on the tee there, is writing it down. But the walks, getting out in nature is
well, I'm an introvert by nature. Being a writer, I could just hole up and just stay, inside. And Chris isn't. He's the complete opposite. He's always, let's go. But it's always so energizing just to get outside. Yeah. Sometimes just leave your phone and just look at the people around you and look at the ocean and the sky and the sunset and just breathe. And literally in an hour, I'm a whole new person. And sometimes, like I say, we get so caught up in our heads that we think we're alone in it, and we're just not thinking clearly because we're so stressed out and burnt out. And I think this past year has been especially tough on all of us because first of all, we've been isolated. Yep. We've been told to stay away from people. So now I'm seeing people are a little on edge when you get too close. And I hate that because I'm such a people person. I've probably had thousands of hugs from these notes. So I miss that connection that we have with people. So I want to see us get back to a place where we're just being aware of each other. And I think as long as we can be aware of each other, we can take our attention off of our own problems,
No, I think that's so true. And it's also, I want to bring, some light to actually listening as well.
That's the key to communication.
It is, but it's awesome to see, like, my wife and I have the same thing, and you and Chris, he actually listens not just to you verbally, but also to your body language. But then you listen to him when he goes, Natalie, I think we need to go for a walk. And I think that's when you've gone through like what all of us have, and you realize it and you work through it and you want to be better from it, you end up actually acknowledging things. Like, I can see people now and I can go, you're burned out, without even talking to them. I can just look at them and go, you are burned out. You need a break. You need to go take a deep breath. And because you just get in tune with that, but then it's the listening as well. I have my wife, she'll go to me, Chris, I think you're getting burned out again. I'm like, no, yeah, actually I probably am.
And it's a gift when you have somebody who can read you like that, and who will say something and not just, leave you be. I've never had that. So having somebody who, literally, he's so in tune because I'm sort of like I said, an introvert, and I don't express every feeling I have at every moment. But he gets that sense, and he'll be like, okay, he'll come over. And so that's a gift when you have a partner who gets that and gets you and helps you, keeps you from getting burnt out,
I think for those listening as well, it's realizing, hey, you probably have that person. You just need to listen to them.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's key to communication,
Yep.
is listening. And I think, even this project, I think that's been the beauty of it is, I have cops and vets, and they all say, I don't talk about my service. And like I say, if you listen, if you stop and I've never had to twist anybody's arm to tell me about their whole life story.
No.
People just can sense that you're going to listen, and as soon as they get that, they just their whole soul pours out,
Yep.
and it's amazing.
Yeah,
Fabulous.
it so is. So Natalie, I have a question for you, and you probably heard me ask it to Chris, but it is my most passionate question. I believe everybody's got a why that stems from when they're a kid, and what drives them has always driven them to do the good things and do the things that they do, and then leads into what we do. Do you have an idea of what your why is, Natalie?
I think part of my why is because even as a kid, I was always very stubborn, and if somebody tells me I can't do something, I'm going to find a way to do it. And my why is partly that, like I love people, and I just have this tendency to want to help and be a part of a solution. And my mother growing up and my dad used to call me gluey because I would just stick to things. I would just not let things go. And I think part of my why is that I just don't take no for an answer. Or if somebody says we can't fix this, or, like I said, we're looking outside at the world today, and people are so angry. And when I first started this project, when I thought I'm going to turn it into a movement, um, my closest friends would look at me and say, that's crazy. And so when I would try to recruit them to write notes with me, they're like, nah, it's not really my calling. And for a split second, I was like, okay, this is probably silly. This is probably, people aren't going to get this.
Yeah.
But I'm so stubborn that I'm like, no, I'm not stopping. I'm going to keep doing it. I don't care what people think. I'm going to keep doing it. And I think it's that is
Help
what,
find a way.
yeah, it's
Find a
because
way.
I really believe it's the little things that are going to fix this world. It's not going to be government. It's not going to be this big solution. I think it's in the little things that we do as people. And I have just seen since I was a kid how little it takes to impact people. And I love that. And I'm just so stubborn that I'm not going to just give up because people think it's not cool or not something they want to do. So if somebody tells me no, or they kind of make me doubt myself, then I'm going to go headlong into it. And that's maybe I tell Chris, I'm like, am I just being stubborn? Am I just pushing this and it's really not a thing? But it is, because we've written like literally probably close to 35,000 notes. I have people all over the country now who are doing this. They love it. I had one woman, she in the past 3 weeks, she has sent me 150 love notes for police officers that we're sending out across the country. She just loves it. She found purpose. And I think that is the key to life and to finding your way out of burnout or a dark day or whatever. It's just having a purpose, waking up and going for it, whatever it is.
I totally agree with that one. So Natalie, so if people are wanting to get in touch with you, or they want to maybe write some notes for you, how do they go about doing that?
Okay, so I have a Facebook page. It's Nothing But Love Notes. Same with Instagram. I have a website, nothingbutlovenotes.com. And I encourage you just to write notes, put our hashtag, you can write them to whoever you want. It doesn't have to be just police and veterans and firefighters. It can be anybody. Like I say, if you have a teacher or somebody, put our hashtag. That way we can follow them and see where around the world we are.
Yeah.
And or if you're not really into handing them out, because it can be a little intimidating. I did have one veteran chase me down a parking lot, and he was not happy until he read the note, and then he started crying. So it was a bad thing, and then it turned into a good thing. So if you're not into handing them out, you can mail them to me. You can find my mailing address on my website, on my Facebook page. I'm happy to hand them out for you. Just send them unsealed, and I will find a home for them. Believe me, there's so many people out there that that are very open to a little handwritten note.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. So it's mostly all handwritten, not email, or like not email you or anything.
all handwriting. That's where
Handwriting.
the is.
Cool.
That's where
Okay.
it's just taking that time to handwrite something. We live in a digital age, and people, mostly young people don't know how to write. I was a substitute teacher for a couple of years, and young people just don't write. They don't know how to write a letter. They don't, handwrite, and they kind of begrudgingly do it when you ask them to. But we spoke to 150 football players for a high school. And I was like, oh, how am I going to get 150 boys, teenage boys, to want to write love notes? And, I brought some of my veteran friends in and first responders who had gotten a love note, and they loved it. And they were so on board, and they were all writing, to their mom or to their coach or to their brother. It would just turn into this, it's amazing.
Yeah.
It's just so amazing. I can't stand it. So, yeah, handwriting, that's the magic.
I love it. I love it. I just looked up, because I've done some personal development programs like Tony Robbins and stuff, and he has you write yourself a letter.
Yeah.
Around like not necessarily a thank you, but what you want to see it accomplished. And I'm like, yeah, it does. If I typed that out, I wouldn't look at it half as much.
It's lost. It's lost. It's the connection between what's in here follows down your arm right onto the pen. Yeah. And I think that's why grown men cry. That's my superpower. And we all have it. It's just taking time to write a note. It doesn't have to be, I tend to write long ones. They're a little bit longer, but the one where the veteran chased me in the parking lot, it was 3 lines that from the love note he got. It was just like, we love you. You're so brave. Thank you. That's all it said. And he broke down in tears. So it's the simplest thing. And I want people to know that above all is that it's just so easy to make somebody's day.
I love it. I love it. What would be your number one piece of advice to listeners when it comes to writing these love notes or saying thank you to people?
Just have them around. And, anytime you have free time, I always encourage people to write, whether it's in a journal or a note or a letter to, a family member or, the elderly. If you have grandparents that are still alive, write to them. They eat it up, and it just makes their day. Just keep pens and notes around the house. Behind me, you can kind of see, this is my little desk. I have notes, I have pens, love stationery, but just, keep it around, and a pen and a journal or whatever it is that you want to write. But I think it's very healthy. It's good for the soul.
I love it. Yeah. Again, gotten goosebumps today. It's been amazing. Last question I have for you, Natalie. What would be your top tips to self-happiness?
Purpose. Just be purposeful. I feel it wasn't until I was fully purposeful in my life when I found my niche, and I just, all of a sudden, the right people started coming into my life. And Chris came into my life. All of it happened because I set out to have a purpose. I think sometimes we just get lost without it. And you just, find something that you love. And no matter what anybody thinks about it, even if you think it's not important or it's not significant, it is. It is so significant. It was Mahatma Gandhi who said, everything you do will be insignificant, but it's important that you do it.
Yes, very
So
true.
I love that. I just think that, people tend to think, oh, if it's not a big gesture, then it's not worthy, but it is.
That's very true. And actually, you saying that makes me realize I forget about that quite often as well. I'm like, oh, I need to be doing so much bigger. And it's like, no, it's the little things that matter.
It's the small things that you do every day. I look back the past 6 years, I didn't do anything big. Every day was just getting out of bed, sitting down, writing notes, handing them out, and then big things happened. All of a sudden I had these big connections, and Chris and I met Chris, and now we wrote this book, and now it's becoming this important thing. And now Lieutenant Colonel Dave Grossman, who is like the authority of all military and police law enforcement, has written a foreword and called it the best book. And it wasn't because I set out to go do that. It's because I set out to do little things every day that would make a difference. And it all was a culmination of that. And I think that is just it in a nutshell, is just remain purposeful in your day. And no matter how small, don't focus on the big stuff, focus on what you can do in the moment, and big things happen.
Yeah, that's amazing. It's so true. And so purposeful, it's having that purpose, but just doing little things towards that purpose every single day will
They
carry you
say
through.
people who retire and don't have something to get up in the morning, the golfing and all that stuff gets old. And if they don't have purpose, most die within 5 to 6 years.
Yeah.
So it's all about purpose, especially when it hurts, when you're lost and you're not finding your way, like I was that Valentine's Day. I was so lonely. I was heartbroken. I was losing my best friend. I was thinking, this is it. I'm going to be single forever. I was just feeling so sorry for myself. And it was just getting up and doing something for somebody else that really, which started with my mom and turned into my community. And now it's just, my life changed. I'm living by the beach, which is something I always wanted to do, but I never saw a way of how that was going to happen. Again, focus on the small things, and you will get where you want to go. And you'll look back, you're like, how did I do this? Like, how did all this happen?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's magic. It really is.
It so is. And that's why I'm so passionate about the why, because if the why overrides the what, the why overrides the what. You can apply a what to whatever, to the why. And a why is just finding your true deep purpose.
You're going to have haters. You're going to have people who say, well, that's ridiculous, or I don't understand it. Or, I've had people who are supposed to be friends. They just try to tear you down, because people don't mind that you succeed. They just don't want you to be more successful than them.
Yep.
So you just got to cut out all that, the negativity, which isn't always easy, but you just got to stay focused on your thing, your why. And like I said, little steps.
Yeah. No, I love it, Natalie. Any last words, Natalie?
No, I'm just so happy to be here. Seriously, this is awesome.
I'm so happy to have you on. And I read your website and I was like, okay, I kind of get it, but now I totally get. I'm like, oh my God, more people need to do this.
No, seriously, they do. I mean, it's not even about me anymore. It's not even about me or this mission. It's just about yourself. It's about you.
Yeah. I mean, writing for me isn't it, but I like to talk. So my thing is I literally will see, because, I know a lot of cops here anyways, but I'll literally see them. I'll be like, thanks for looking after us. As I just walk past, I'm like, thanks for looking after us. I appreciate it. Stay safe.
We all have our thing.
Yeah.
We weren't all given the same thing. Thank goodness.
Yeah, otherwise we'd all be boring.
It's about just finding that thing and finding your why, and just getting up and doing it every day. Life is short. I learned that losing my mom. I realized that she had regret in her eyes. And before she was diagnosed, she used to say, because we would go to the movies all the time, and she'd be like, we should be doing more. We should be doing more with our life. And I'd be like, yeah, but what, and then all of a sudden she was gone. And I'm like, dying doesn't scare me anymore. It's not living your life and dying with regret. Yeah. And I'm at a point in my life, like, I have no regrets. I just don't. Yeah.
No, it's interesting when you get to that stage as well, isn't it? When you get to that stage where I'm not afraid of dying. I just want to I just want to live the best that I can now. And if I died tomorrow, I know that I have given my best at this time. And tomorrow it just gives me an opportunity to do even more.
Yep. Yep.
Well,
got it.
Thanks, Natalie, for today. And for those listening, remember the little things. Natalie's pointed out a lot of different things. As we always say, take one thing and run with it today. Saying thank you to somebody. I challenge you, as soon as you're done listening to this, go and say thank you to somebody. If you're sitting next to them, just say thank you. Say thank you to somebody, say thank you and why you're thankful for them. And you'll feel so much better. Not to mention how they're going to feel, but you'll feel so much better, And so, really, really just focus on that, find that purpose. If you don't have that purpose, just start to say thank you. And I'm sure you'll find a purpose. And remember, if you want any assistance, we are here to help. The email is fighttheburnoutpodcast@gmail.com. Send us an email. Remember to like, subscribe, share this with somebody, and challenge again, go write a thank you note. And again, thank you, Natalie. Thanks for your time, and we appreciate it. And all the links to access Natalie will be in the description down below. Until next time, love you and stay safe out there, guys.